Clarkson's Farm's newest edition, Andy Cato, has admitted I can't watch it when asked if H has seen his episodes of the Prime Video show. Speaking exclusively to Express.co.uk, the chart-topping Groove Armada star-turned-farmer confessed that he was a fan of the show but doesn't like watching himself, as Kaleb Cooper struggled to take his suggestions on board. "Until I was in it, I watched every episode, but I don't like watching myself. I never watched gigs back. I just can't do it. So that's just a reflection of me," he admitted. "And up to this point I really enjoyed it, the show, and for sure it's had a massive impact I think in making people think where food actually comes from and just how damn hard farming is. And to pull it off year after year, whatever method of farming you're using so that we can all walk into a local shop and the same stuff is there a year in year out, behind that are the most resourceful people in the world. And it's great that the people think about that a little bit more, watching the show. I think as I move forward with Jeremy working on different ways of doing things, the challenge there will be to build a sort of collaborative approach with Kaleb and Charlie and Jeremy and sort of straddle that line between farming is endless and sort of finding ways to communicate all of that nuance in ways which are accessible. It is a challenge but it's one that I enjoy." Andy appears on the show in his capacity as one of the founders of Wild Farmed, a company that specializes in regenerative farming. He set up the company with TV presenter George Lamb and financial whiz Ed Lees to try and improve the quality of crops, as decades of intensive chemical farming have led to degraded soil. This affects not only the quality of the crops grown but ultimately the food products made from them. Jeremy is attempting to become a wild-farmed farmer on his diddly squat farm. However, Kaleb is far from amused and after spreading Epsom salts over a field in episode 5 to increase the magnesium in the soil he raged. He comes over and tells me as a farmer what to do. I don't go to his house and say here's a guitar and a certain song. Admitting Andy's input annoyed him, he said, "As a farmer I don't like change. I hate this field now." Andy readily admits that, unlike Kaleb, his background isn't farming. Having topped the charts as one half of the electropop outfit Groove Armada, he has made what may appear to be a very drastic career and lifestyle change. For over 15 years he has been running his farm in France. His epiphany came via a magazine he picked up on the way back from a gig that contained a thought-provoking article. It talked about the environmental consequences of today's food production system and had this brilliant line in it that said, "If you don't like the system, don't depend on it." And that was really inspiring. And so from understanding stars, whatever that was, mid-30s I thought, right well, I'm gonna try and not depend on it to try and grow some vegetables. I planted some seeds, I saw these seeds become plants and food on the family table, and it is just a miraculous process when you see that unfold, and I just went on this deep dive, reading agricultural books old and new to understand more. Then once you're in all that, you kind of realize that if you're worried about biodiversity, climate change, or health, all of that starts with our food production system. And it really is a silver bullet. So once you've had that realization, it's very hard to ignore it. That's what led to me selling my pension, basically, my songwriting and publishing rights, to buy this farm in France, and then it was a very, very humbling experience about the vast array of skills needed to be a farmer and the fact that I didn't have them and it was a long road back from it, he laughed wryly. Andy admits that the early years of his new life weren't easy. I had either 3 or 4 years on the farm to start with, which were incredibly difficult without any question. The darkest days of my life, he confessed. I was very lucky in that I could go to work on weekends and play records and stop myself from going bankrupt, but even with that lifeline, it was exhausting. Thankfully things eventually turned a corner, I was doing a lot of research and trying to find new ways of growing food in a way which is in harmony with nature, rather than what we've done since World War II, which is basically use chemicals. And what farmers have been pushed to do by governments all over the world. But then when I got into that process, we ended up with a community of schools and customers using their food choices to support what we were doing at the farm. And so you have this thing where we've got collaboration where people are using their food buying money to choose health, mental health, and they want to support us. That's allowing us to do what we want to do here. If we could do this at scale, this will be transformational, because at the moment, the only people who can participate in that kind of deal, that sort of exchange between the farmer and the food buyer, are those lucky enough to live near those local food networks. That's not how all of us buy our food. So how can we make that collaboration work in supermarkets? Because if we can do that, then we can really make a difference. Lo and behold, following this realization, Wild Farmed was formed in 2018, and the company has gone from strength to strength and is considered expert in regenerative farming, hence the call from Jeremy to aid his efforts on Diddly Squat. At present, they are partnered with bakeries, restaurant chains, and supermarkets, and they work with over 100 growers. Bread made from their wheat now sells in Waitrose. It is quite an achievement for someone who knew nothing about farming for the first 3 decades of their life. Having started to get the message out there, Andy is more determined than ever to ensure that people understand the genesis of their food. One of the big focuses at Wild Farmed is that we've got this amazing team of people in the office who are focused entirely on this, bringing the message to a largely urban audience who, and I include myself in this until 15 years ago, are totally divorced from our food system, and how that interacts with nature and how we're actually all part of this interlinked system. If one bit of it falls down, then we all go down. But no one realizes any of this stuff, including a lot of people who work in food. We talk about provenance, where some things come from, but very, very rarely, even in food circles, do you talk about how it was grown. And that's the key bit: how was it grown? And so there's a huge piece of work to do, and we're trying our best on this to re-engage an audience with where their food comes from. But I think an important part of making that real and purposeful is to say, here's some information about where your food comes from, delivered in an accessible way. But also, here in a shop near you at a price you can afford is food that is linked directly to a set of farmers who are growing things in a particular way. Otherwise, it's just information and you can't act on it. You can learn more about Wild Farmed from their website. Wild Farmed bread is currently available to buy in Waitrose. Clarkson's Farm Season 3 is available to watch now on Prime Video.